Okay, I think we're ready to get started. And Mariana, thank you for being our WebEx producer. I'm still hearing background noise, so I'm wondering if everybody's line is muted at this point.
As they're coming in, they're actually being muted, so.
Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead, and I want to welcome everybody. And gosh, it's great to be back together again with everyone. And Susan Day-Colfax and I are here to give you some tips on finding that ideal academic appointment. And we want to be sure that everybody is kind of on the same page for launching a job search. And just to remind you again how we're going to run the session, we want to have all the telephone lines muted, and our producer from WebEx is doing this for us. We'll ask you to raise your hand to respond, and then we're going to do one polling question. So remember, you do that by clicking on the screen. And we'll try to multitask here and look at any responses or questions that we have in the text box. And our producer, Mariana, is also looking down there. If you have technical questions, she can help you get that kind of set up while we move ahead forward. So we'll go ahead here. So we're going to talk about finding appointments, faculty roles, networking, all those things that you would want to be thinking about in finding that special job after you complete your scholar program. And I'd love to have a show of hands here to see how many of you already have a job or a good lead for one. So if you do, raise your hand. And do you remember how to raise your hand? There's that little hand icon that's down there on the lower left side underneath the participant list. And looks like I thought I saw Tara's hand go up. But anyway, let's take a minute and be sure that everybody who wants to or can raise your hand. If you have a job or a good lead for one, raise your hand and let us know. Of course, we would love to see everybody's hand up there at this point, or soon anyway. I'm looking again, and I'm not seeing anybody's hand. So I'm wondering if that means that we're still in the kind of getting search mode started. So if that's the case, we'll certainly all the tips we're going to give you today will be useful to you. Let's start talking about and thinking about what is that ideal appointment that you're going to be searching for. And I'm going to ask you to visualize this in your mind. And what I'd love for you to do is just take a piece of paper and kind of jot down some ideas here. What does this ideal job look like to you? What kinds of things are important to you, and what is this you're going to be doing? And I like to think of this as an elevator speech. The elevator speech is something that you can say to somebody in the time that it takes you to go 1 or 2 floors on an elevator. And so it's very short, very to the point. But I'm hoping by the end of this session you have that elevator speech about your ideal job ready, because you never know who you're going to be meeting, and you might want to be mentioning what it is that you're looking for. And some examples that you might be coming up with. You might want to be having a full-time faculty appointment and be working in a sim lab or a sim center at a school of nursing near your house. That might be what is ideal for you. Maybe for one of you, teaching a critical care course in the clinical at a school of nursing and working at the acute care as a acute care nurse practitioner. So combining those things. So I'm going to ask you here now, take just a little minute here and write that elevator speech. What does your ideal job look like? And when you have that done, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand and tell us, give us the elevator speech, or you can type it in the chat line so we can see a couple of examples. And while you're thinking here, I'll just talk a little bit more. I asked one of the doctoral students not too long ago what their program of research was to give you the elevator speech. And actually, we were riding up on an escalator together, and she was able to articulate that to me very succinctly. She knew exactly, where she was going with her research, what she was studying, what kind of questions she was going to ask, and how she was linking that to her faculty career. So the more that you can tell people what it is that you want to be able to do, the more likelihood your networking will be successful. So does anybody want to be brave and give us an elevator speech about your ideal job? If so, raise your hand. Or type it in on the chat function down there in the lower bottom. And I'm not seeing any hands raised, which kind of surprises me because this is usually a pretty vocal group. But I see Marianne. Yeah. And Marianne, do you want to be brave here? Go ahead.
Hi there. Hi.
Hey.
Hello? Hi.
Yeah.
I was actually going to type it into the chat, but the chat doesn't seem to work. I see the chat box, but I can't type anything in there.
Okay. Did you?
So I don't know if it's activated, or how do I?
It is activated. If you type right below it, actually, not into the chat box, that's where it pops up.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
Because you'll see a couple of responses there.
And tell me the designation you
Yeah.
want to send it to. So, where it says
send it to everybody. So host, presenter, and panelist, right?
All participants.
Okay, got it. I see it. All right.
And if anybody wants to just tell us, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you too. In the meantime, the rest of you are kind of jotting down some key ideas, right? Okay. Teaching the clinical setting of a nursing program. Janae, thank you. Okay.
And then I'll tell her.
And I'm thinking that Janae is probably going to be matching her clinical setting where she's teaching with her area of clinical expertise. So thanks, Janae. Okay, anybody else want to venture forth a elevator speech for us? Either by tapping there in the text box below the send to below in the chat, or raising your hand.
So I was just informed that the participants might not have the option to send to everyone. So if someone wants a participant, if one of the participants would like to send to everyone, you can email it to either myself or the moderator, and they can send it out to everyone, forward it to everyone.
This is in the chat to host, presenter, and all panelists. That's the fourth option that they have.
Okay. Okay, and Janae is adding to her list here about the NLN technology, and she'd like to be focusing on simulations. And here's something from Tara, a position that allows flexibility so she can have her nurse practitioner practice and yet creativity to pursue teaching in a lecture setting. In other words, do the didactic teaching and pursue her research interests. Okay, so you're looking for a lot of flexibility in the position, and that's great. Okay, and so there's some good examples, and I think we'll move ahead here a little bit, but these are the kinds of things that I would love at the end of this session that you have at the tip of your tongue so that you can be networking. Okay, and now we have a polling question, and Marianne, I'm going to ask you to put up the poll at this point, and while we're doing that, we can see a few more ideal jobs down there. Marianne has put one in. Marianne, do you have the polling question ready for us? Okay, thanks. Okay. Everybody, do you see there on the far right-hand side the polling question? And we're asking for one answer. So of all the things that might be most important to you in this appointment that you've just described, visualized for yourself, what of these things is the most important for you to have? And, certainly many people in this day and age having good health care benefits is probably one of the most important things. And if you're piecing together two components of a position, then maybe you will not be able to have the benefits that the full-time position might be able to give you. So you want to be thinking about that. If you were on the session last with Bob Atkins, he talked to us about the school environment and the resources that the school has that would match with your needs for teaching. And if you're going to want to be pursuing your research and your doctoral degree, you want to know if there's resources for that, and will there be support either financial or in terms of time release for that. So select one of those, and then Marianne, I'm about ready for you to show us the results. What is most important here to our scholars?
And second first.
Okay, and the voting's closing now, so I hope everybody's had a chance to do this. Okay, well, looks like salary is important to most everybody, and then the opportunity to teach in your area of clinical expertise. And that makes good sense because you're being prepared in both areas, both the teaching expertise and the clinical expertise. So that will be a great synergy for that. And I think, Marianne, can everybody see the results here?
Yes, they can.
Okay, so you can kind of see how this fell out. So you can kind of keep this in mind, your own personal, what's important to you, so that you can be thinking about this in terms of your job. Okay, I'm going to move ahead now and talk a little bit about the faculty role, and just to kind of remind you that there's several aspects of the faculty role, and generally speaking, we talk about the faculty role in terms of Boyer's model, and he was a person who worked in higher education that realized that faculty did more than actually do research, and he discovered these, wrote about and had us understand that there's really four aspects of the role, and he called them scholarships. The scholarship of discovery, which is the research aspect, and the scholarship of application, which is service, and that really fits nicely with nursing, and of course teaching. And then I'm going to go back to the middle one there, integration, and that scholarship pulls all three together. But typically the faculty role deals with the research, the service, and the teaching. So you are going to be somewhere along the line involved with all three of these, but not all at the same time and in various degrees of importance as you move through your career. So just again to kind of reiterate the roles, and I know you know these, but again, the teacher role, the educator role, and you're getting wonderful preparation for that role. And then the service role, which is in nursing, is considered, the clinical practice, and then also service to the school and academic institutions, so on. And then the research and scholar role. And the researcher role, we usually reserve that for the doctorally prepared researchers, but we expect that all faculty are doing scholarship. In other words, making their work visible, writing, co-authoring, obtaining small grants, and contributing to the science of nursing. So even though you're maybe not totally prepared to be a full-fledged researcher, scholarship is still a component of the role. And Susan, I'm going to ask you, because I'm kind of speaking here in some generalities about educator roles in general, but what do you see when the master's prepared nurses are hired in a faculty role? Is that, or a clinical track role, is the scholar aspect of this part of the components of their job description?
That is usually the case. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We always want to be thinking in terms of scholarship and what we are applying in our, for example, in a clinical practice, what the science that we are applying, the scholarly practice that we are invested in, and then our own, either if it's not research,
by definition. It may be evidence-based practice, programmatic development and evaluation, other aspects of scholarship within that practice that is useful to disseminate through reviewed activities. That may be publishing, it could be juried presentations, but really getting out there right out of the gate as soon as you can to really begin to get comfortable with the process.
Here. Okay, great. You were saying that you thought that the scholar role was inherent in most of the academic appointments that the scholars might be searching for. So I think that's good to keep in mind, too, in terms of the expectations. I'm going to move us ahead to the next slide here. Just a few more points about the role. You're going to be entering it, and, you don't need to do everything all at once. When we're looking at the research and the service and the teaching, probably the thing that you can do best first is to become an excellent teacher, and then things start falling in place. But one thing you do want to do as you're searching here is to be sure that you understand the expectation of you in the role. And particularly those of you that may be having some split roles between service and the School of Nursing. So, kind of keep these things in mind as you're building your career. I'm going to talk real quickly here about some academic appointments, and again, I'm going to talk in terms of some generalities, and then I'll ask Susan, you can contribute some things that maybe are unique or specific to some of the appointments that the scholars might be searching for in New Jersey. But generally speaking, you want to understand that this appointment is to the school and to the institution in which it resides. So they're meeting their needs first, and yours second. So you want to understand what they need in a position and how you're going to be able to fit within it. But generally speaking, as I mentioned, there's three elements, and you will probably be expected to do a little bit of both, or all three. But here they are, and I'll just kind of review them quickly. And, visiting appointment is usually something that's temporary and being considered for full-time later. And sometimes it's worthwhile taking those positions because they can turn into a full-time later. And Susan, again, feel free to add if I'm misspeaking. Mm-hmm. The adjunct titles usually are for those that are providing service to the school or from the school to the clinical agency, and usually by teaching the students. Sometimes there's salary that comes with this, and sometimes there isn't. And then the teaching assistant or associate, this is usually a part-time position, and again, maybe it's something that would be worthwhile you're considering if you can balance it out with some other aspect of a position. So again, within academic life, and this is very different from nursing service. You all have probably had experience of appointments in nursing service, but in academia, there's some little tricks and tips here. There's tracks here, 3 tracks generally speaking. A clinical track, and the emphasis here is particularly teaching in clinical practice. The tenure track is more teaching service and research. And then a research scientist, their primary role is to conduct research. So understand those 3 different tracks and which ones you might be searching for as an appointment. Generally speaking, the tenure track appointments require a doctoral degree, but back on the clinical track, which may be an appointment that you all might be seeking, there's the teaching in the clinical practice, and there could be a little bit of a scholarship involved too that you want to ask about that. Okay, and then you want to understand the ranks, and from low to high, and going up to appointment level, instructor, full professor, and these ranks can exist within a clinical track or a tenure track appointment, and generally speaking, these are how to advance from one to the next is set by the university, and certainly at the higher rank, the doctoral degree is required. So, Susan, I'll stop and say, is there anything that you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'll just add just very briefly a couple of points. If you end up in a joint or dual role type of appointment, as well as what would maybe be another type of part-time adjunct, part-time or adjunct, and some schools make a distinguish between those two types of roles. Those types of positions carry the expectation of scholarship. However, I want to encourage all of you that when you're looking for positions, that you talk about the opportunities that you would have in those types of positions to work with other faculty who are engaged in scholarship, so that you can be mentored in that way. You can become part of the scholarly process, so that you are learning and applying and getting yourself out there again in peer-reviewed kind of opportunities. And then in the public higher education system in New Jersey, have a lecturer standing, in addition to the instructor, assistant professor, associate professor rank. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask, are there questions from the scholars at this point about these appointments? And if so, raise your hand and I'll call on you, and then you can do the *6 and then your line. Okay, well, I'll continue on a little bit more, and we'll pause for questions again, too. So now we're going to get down to the meat of this, how to find that job and how to negotiate getting the one that you want. So probably we can ask ourselves, where can we find these academic appointments? And in my mind, probably the best way to find these is by networking. And that's where that elevator speech will come in handy. But you have a fabulous, the rich resource of the network. All of your scholars, all of the faculty, all of the mentors, and as members of the CLC. So you have a wide range of people that you can reach out to. We've also tried to bring in many people who are, teaching and working in New Jersey, and they might be good resources. The one thing, and Susan, you can, kind of speak to this too, but I think where the information about the academic appointments comes from is networking. Usually the fact that an appointment is going to be coming up and being open is, told through the network system, not so much because it's necessarily, posted someplace. So it's a big plus for you to be out there talking to people and trying to see what's available. So that would be one place. And certainly, you can be looking at the schools of nursing that you're interested in applying to, and most of them have, a place on the website that tells where the, about the positions that are available. You may have in New Jersey some professional meetings where schools of nursing are recruiting for faculty. I know I was recently at a meeting down in Cincinnati for student nurses, and they many schools of nursing, significated to NON, and I'm sure your state ISNA, your New Jersey Nurses Association, probably has both some schools of nursing where they're recruiting. So, going out, being active in your professional organizations, and you may end up simply being creative and talking to several different people and put your appointment together. And Susan, I'll back up here, and is there anything else that you want to give in terms of tips here about how to get a hold of these jobs and find out when they're becoming available?
Everything that you have said is totally on target. Let me just share a couple of things that we're going to be doing in terms of the program office to facilitate this as well. We are going to ask all of your programs to find out from all of the scholars to give us information about those of you who are graduating. So we want to know who you are, the geographic area that you want to be looking in, and if there are any particular schools, the expertise that you have, the interests that you have. We want to have a sense of that around the state. We are going to be communicating with deans and directors to anticipate that who you are, that you are going to be when you're going to be graduating, and we are also going to be communicating with chief nursing officers, because we want everyone to be thinking about and very creatively about how we look at the types of roles and positions that you are interested in, so that because our goal is to retain you in teaching positions, in faculty roles, as we originally put forward. And I'll share a little bit more about the incentive program a little bit later as well.
Okay, great. Well, we'll move ahead then and talk a little bit about the appointment process. And I know it differs for each school and for each probably each position that is being posted. But generally speaking, and, at least in my experience, there is an interview with the administrators or the faculty, and some of the times the appointment process involves meeting with students. And I've seen situations where faculty have been asked to teach, do a little mini class. So you can anticipate as a part of the process that you will, be meeting with people at the school. I think another thing that's probably part of the appointment process is that you will be submitting your CV and a portfolio or a dossier for the peer review for whoever the appointment committee is or whoever is considering your application. And you all have that portfolio started, and we're going to keep urging you to keep it developed and have it polished and finished and ready to go. And I think in one of the career builder sessions, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to have that portfolio and your personal statement job ready. So you should be keep working on getting that developed, because at least the very bottom line, your CV needs to be submitted, and if not that, certainly a portfolio or the dossier. And I know many of you had resumes and have them still, and I would say keep that at the ready too, because if you're going to be getting a joint or a dual position, you may need to then have a resume that is submitted to the clinical agency. They sometimes prefer reading those, but again, you'll want to. And I think Angela McBride, when she did her career development session with you all, talked about having your documents ready in various forms and formats and ready to be distributed. And sometimes, have them, you may be asked to, something may come up immediately, and somebody will say, well, send me a CV by email, and I'll take a look and see if this is something that might be a fit for you. So you want to be ready, and I would say now is about the time when you should be getting ready. So I think another part of the appointment process is to be prepared to discuss what you want out of the position and how you and your work is going to contribute to the school and then also to the mission of the university. And you'll want to be able to discuss this, rather specifically, so that means you're going to need to read and understand the mission and the goals of the university and the School of Nursing and your values and goals and beliefs as they fit with that of the school. And then you'll also, want to know that your application will be reviewed, and then the appointment in most settings is more or less determined by your faculty peers. Usually there's a search and screen committee, and by administrators. And the appointment with the rank and the track and so on is really based on educational preparation and the information that's on your dossier or your CV in terms of your attainments for the particular given rank. And again, Susan, you may have some specific kinds of things to add about this appointment process. I know from the perspective of a dean, it looks a little different. We're getting music again.
Oh, it's gone.
Okay.
It's quickly gone. Again, depending on the type of position that you seek or you find that suits your interests and needs and your starting place in this, you may or may not have the opportunity to talk directly to the dean. But what you want to have the opportunity to do is really find out from the department chair or the school, someone in the school, whoever you are working with, and other faculty there, what are the values? What is valued in that organization? And how is teaching valued in that organization? And how will you get support in your ongoing development, both as you transition from being a student and a scholar to being in what may be your first teaching role or specific position. So that's an important part of that appointment process. So you have it's about fit and match, which is what a lot of what Diane is talking about, and you put a lot into a portfolio and dossier and knowing what you want to think about. And so look at it as an opportunity. This appointment process is an opportunity to determine that fit.
Great. And I think I'm fair in saying that the appointment process in the schools of nursing are a little bit different than they are in a clinical agency. And my recollection, and granted it's a long time ago, I went in and talked to the unit manager and signed on the dotted line. I asked a few questions. They asked a few questions. They wanted to see my license, and that was it. In academic life, there's more layers and many more interviews and discussions and so on. So it's a little different, and I think what we're trying to do here is just draw your attention to the fact that it may be a little more complex than you might be used to. Not to make it daunting for you, because it's really it's not bad, but just to be prepared that you will be discussing with various administrators and faculty, and perhaps the students as well. So what are some of the things that you would want to discuss when you do go to that interview? And you'll want to ask what kinds of courses will you teach, and I quickly saw in some of your elevator speeches that you were interested in using teaching in the courses of your clinical expertise, and that's ideal. Not always do the course assignments fall out so easily. You may be asked to teach something in your area of secondary expertise, so you want to be sure that how that will fall for you and if it's a good fit. And you would want to ask about the typical workload. And one reason I would think this would be important to you is most of you are going to be considering going on for your doctoral degree, and you want to be sure that you are going to be able to have a reasonable workload, and there is support. And we'll talk a little bit more about that last point in a minute. But one thing when I sat in on the session with Bill Holsimer when he was at the Foundation session, he suggested that people ask, can they teach that same course for several semesters? And maybe that's something that you could ask as well. Or are the courses rotated around? Because if you're having to do course prep, for each given semester, frequently, then this doesn't leave you a lot of time to build an area of expertise, and you're going to be continually developing your courses rather than focusing on some next steps. So you can ask about those questions. Certainly ask what resources are there. Is there good AV support? Is there, if you wanted to learn how or have a passion for doing simulations, you want to know, is there a simulation lab and what kind of resources are there? If you are going to be developing multimedia kinds of presentations in your class, is there a teaching learning support center there? So ask about things that are important to you in that regard. And then certainly a key question that you're going to ask is about your clinical practice. And most of you are being prepared as nurse practitioners, and will have some certain number of clinical hours that you need to fulfill. And of course, one way you can do it is with a dual appointment. Maybe there's at our school we encourage people to do clinical practice, whether nurse practitioners or not, and we allow 1 day a week that can be devoted for clinical practice, and maybe that would be something that you could find out if the school does that, or if you can negotiate that. Or can you use have an appointment that is only for 10 months, and you can use the other 2 months, your summertime more or less, is usually what that is, to do your clinical practice. You want to ask as many creative ways that you can think about in terms of keeping your clinical practice active. But you'll also need to know what is your clinical practice and be able to articulate that the two people that you're talking with at the school. And then lastly, the support for pursuing a doctoral degree. And at our school, we want have any appointment at the school now. People, the faculty need to be working on a doctoral degree. And our dean has made available a small stipend and has also guaranteed a little bit of a release time from the workload, so that one course reduction actually is what it is, so that the faculty members can work on their doctoral degree while they are still working full-time at the school. So I'll stop here, and Susan, you can contribute here too. What kinds of things would you, anything else, any other tips you'd want to give the scholars here in terms of what they should be asking about when they come to the interview?
I think you've really covered things well. One of the things that one of the questions a specific question that you're probably going to want to ask, and this will relate to the incentive program. So let me take just a minute or two here to begin that providing you with information about this. Let me first say that we are going to have be putting out more detailed information about the incentive program in January. Once we have once it has actually gone through all of the levels of final approval through the foundation. You'll recall that we had to make a change early on in the program, moving from the language of mandating your testing and for the tuition and stipend support. That changed. I'm just going to try to keep talking. Okay. Expectations have not changed. So the Robert Johnson Foundation has made this investment about the faculty, and based on what you have said in the program, the faculty role. So we want to help you do that. So in fact, the foundation is now going to additional incentives for the work.
We have music. Somebody's phone is on hold or on. Mariana, can you mute this one line?
I can try looking for it.
It would be the same line that had the music before. Not on the phone.
Okay. Thank you. So as I was saying, the foundation is going to provide additional incentives. We want you to be able to meet the expectations and fulfill the commitment that you accepted when you came into the program. And so the faculty incentive program will support those of you who serve as faculty in New Jersey, in a New Jersey nursing program, or enroll in an accredited doctoral program after graduation. There will be a maximum amount of funds that you are eligible for, and that is $30,000 in terms of the overall incentive program. If you teach at least half-time, and that is going to be as defined by whatever a full-time teaching load is in the organization or the school where you would teach. If you are teaching at least a half-time teaching load, and you may be practicing and we want to recognize, certainly for those of you who are NP students, that you're going to want to be doing that, you will be eligible for up to 3 years of an increasing additional incentive, financial incentive. or you actually could take a lump sum that you can, once you are matriculated into a doctoral program, would help you with that funding. So, as I said, I will have the specifics on this in January. We will be putting it out to all of you. The program office is going to support in every way that we can to help you find places where they're looking for positions. We're not going to match you. We're not going to get involved in your individual negotiations, but we certainly want to be helpful in getting the word out to deans and directors and chief nursing officers across the state that you are coming out of the program and that you are going to be looking for these types of roles and positions. So, so I hope that that as an introduction that helps you think about your pursuit of your teaching role.
Okay. Gosh, Susan, from my perspective, that sounds like a wonderful, wonderful level of support and what a nice opportunity. And part of this career planning that we're talking about all this year is to be sure that everybody's thinking about that doctoral degree, and it probably is not too soon to even start thinking about where and your major and those kinds of things. So we'll try to do a little bit of a session on that too. But great support. Susan, we have a question from Claire. So Claire, I'm going to call on you, and I think you probably, unless Mariana can unmute you, you'll have to do a *6 to talk.
Thank you, Diane. I just wanted clarification. Today is the first that I'm hearing about doctoral studies, and I wanted to know whether the student would need to be a full-time doctoral student to be eligible for the stipend, because now is when they would need to be applying for September admission to doctoral programs if that was their intent, and I didn't know whether they needed to take X number of credits or be a full-time student, or what the role of doctoral education was for the master scholars who will be graduating May and August.
And that will be information and the details that we'll put out in January, Claire.
I'm just worried that, if that's something they're considering, they would need to be applying now to the programs, is my point.
It wasn't, to tell you the truth, it wasn't our expectation that students would be matriculating in this coming fall in doctoral studies or going immediately on. If there are scholars who are thinking about that, will you please let me know? We will have this information out in early January, and I don't have. We have talked about this, and I just don't want to give out information that is inaccurate or that hasn't been ultimately approved.
Thank you.
But thanks, that's a good question.
Yeah, and I'll just insert for the scholars too that doctoral studies in most cases full-time is considered 6 credits. Is that true in New Jersey? So it's not like you need to be taking 12 or 15 all at once.
I think it's a bit by school, but I don't know honestly I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. But just so that the scholars aren't overwhelmed by thinking that they're going to be working full-time and taking 12 credits at once, that's usually a pretty full load. And anyway, just...
Diane?
Yeah?
It's Pat Reineke. I'm sorry to interrupt, but when I was a doctoral student just a few years ago, it was 9 credits a semester was considered full-time.
Okay. Thanks for that.
That was New York, but...
Yeah. Well, and, as Susan says, it's probably, school by school.
Right.
But as the scholars are, gathering this information, that maybe there's something you'd want to know about the school that you're considering to make an application to. So this is a good time for any more questions. So we're seeing the hands raised here. So let's see what other questions you have about anything that we've talked about thus far. Faculty, mentors, scholars. Anybody open mic here. So raise your hand and we'll call on you. Otherwise, I think everything's probably good to go. I'll assume that nobody has more questions, and we'll certainly pause at the end again, so be thinking about them if there's something that we haven't answered for you.
Hey, Diane, I just want to make sure we give just a half extra second. I'm imagining that that people might have had their lines muted individually as we asked.
Okay.
So just wanted to make sure that we're given a moment for that. And And Mariana, I don't know. I'm seeing X's on the phones. Are you able to unmute those lines
no,
now?
the only way that they can unmute their line is if they hit *6 on their phone keypad. That'll unmute their lines, and as well, *6 to mute their lines back up again.
So we see several people with the lines muted. Just make sure that you unmute the line, because we don't want to close out the question session if there's still questions there. So
Yeah.
if you're having problems or if you want to ask a question and your line not muted, just please raise your hand and we'll give that an extra second.
Okay. Thanks, because we have given a lot of information, and it's hard for me to know how, if you know all of this or all of this is brand new. So I'm sure it's somewhere in between, but just in case, let's be sure that we have everybody's questions. And we have music again. So if we can locate the source, that would be great. So I'm going to hard to talk over this, so I'll probably just wait a minute here. So Marianne, if you can do anything worth getting at this one, feel free. Okay, much better. Okay, well, after you've identified, one of the schools or a place where you might want to make an appointment, one thing that's also going to be part of the appointment process is letters of reference. And normally I wouldn't have even spent time on this because I think this is probably, job hunting 101. But something kind of unusual happened to me a couple weeks ago. I got a call to provide a reference for a student, somebody who was a student of mine in a class 10 years ago. And she had never asked me if I would be glad to serve as a reference for her. And I had been working on a project with her, kind of on the fringes, and, we never discussed where she was working or what she was doing. And when the call came and the interviewer was asking me, about her teaching, what kind of experience she had, where is she working now, what kind of work ethic does she have, what's her area of research, I had to take a deep breath and, try to cover as best as I could. Unfortunately, that interviewer was pretty savvy, and she kind of backed me down and to the point where I could say, yes, she was a great student, she stood out, she was, had a lot of initiative, and I could say some positive things. But I was totally, at a loss to say anything that could be helpful. But had I known what she was doing and what her interest in, that she was applying at this school, because I could have said some things to the school and that would be very, very helpful to her about her. So be sure that you think about your references and ask them. And I would say now is a good time to line up 2 or 3 people that you and let them ask them if they would serve as a reference for you. So when the time comes that you are making that application, and sometimes these things happen quickly. You have to have those letters of reference right ready. So this is on your to-do list for the holidays here. And ask the person, get their agreement, and then when the time comes, be sure that you give them a lot of detailed information. Okay, so, and then we're assuming that you receive an offer. And as we kind of said to you time and time again, that in order to be sure that you have a successful first appointment, you want to be sure that this is a good fit for you, that your goals and needs are met, that you understand the job requirements, and how your work is going to fit into the mission, and what your next steps there at that school are going to be. So, Susan, I guess I'll ask here before we move on to talking a little bit about networking. Is there anything else that you'd want to add here about, closing the deal, accepting the appointment?
No, I think just to I think your points about letters of reference are very, very important. No matter who asks me for a letter of reference, whether it's a former student or a colleague who's applying for another position, I ask for the same information. I ask for a resume or a CV. I ask them to tell me what is, how what makes this a fit for them and what their contributions will be. And so that is just extremely, extremely important. And I encourage all of you to work very closely with people who know you best, because a generic general letter is not going to help you. A letter that really can speak to your talents and skills and how that is a fit for this position is a much stronger recommendation.
Yeah, and I want to just underscore that this may be the most important slide in the whole set here, because this is a competitive job market, and if you can find a reference who can speak specifically about your work, and maybe now, because if you're looking for a dual or joint appointment or something that's going to support both your teaching and your clinical practice, you may need to have letters that speak on both sides. So you want to be sure that everybody understands how their piece fits into the whole of the position that you're seeking. And I'll say I go one step further than you do, Susan. I ask them to make bullet points of what they want me to say. And if I have time, I'll draft the letter, or sometimes it depends on what they're applying for, but I'll ask them to draft it for me. And then I'll send it back and ask them, am I saying the things that are most important to them and that will be helpful in that position. So do not feel uncomfortable in asking your reference to consider information that you can provide them. That's what's going to make it easy. And, if I'd had even just the email from that student who was asking me for a reference, I could have said so much more about her. And maybe sometimes it's not, they're not asking for letters. They may be picking up and making a cold call from a list of names. So be sure that you're trying. Okay, let's see. I think we can probably move ahead. And, again, be sure that this is going to be your ideal job before you sign on the dotted line. So I'm going to talk a little bit next about networking, because to me this is really your best shot at finding out what's available and how to match. And Susan has indicated that, the whole collaborative learning community is going to be helping you doing that networking, but you're empowered to do this as well. So wherever your networks are and whoever else that you can help network is all to the good, because our goal for all of you is to find this ideal job where you can be serving as a nurse educator and achieving your clinical practice goals. So be sure that you're out mingling and getting to know people who are working in these areas and who have interests similar to yours. These are some general networking tips, but they're going to be really important to you now, because this is how you're developing your professional identity. And you want to be able to say to people, I'm looking for a position where I can do my clinical practice as a nurse practitioner and work with students in an undergraduate program to teach them critical care. And I believe that I have, these beautifully combined skills, and I will be an asset to both of your agencies. So you want to be sure that you can tell people, and be out there stirring up the interest. So here's some ways that you can do it, and I'm sure you all have your own ways. And one is to become a member of a committee, being out there with the meetings. And I know many of you are going to professional meetings, and you're meeting people who can be of enormous help to you. I know we had 3 people come to 4, I think, to the NLN Technology Conference, and you met, some people who might even be able to, write a letter indicating some of the information that you've obtained. Another way to do this is that you really get your work and your professional identities through your presentations and publications, and some of you have opportunities to do that too. So don't shy away from it. Be out there and let your light shine. There's social networks in your area of interest. There's, I would say, join, some of the blogs that are professional and in the area where you are working, and actually sometimes there's job leads there. Some of the, I'm not sure how this works for you, but there's a social media called LinkedIn. I think Diane Steve talked to you about that. That's where you can put your profile out and be linked in to various other people who are maybe in a position of looking for, employing someone with your expertise. And again, your network here, I've never seen anything like this with the fabulous opportunity. Usually there's just a network of one group of students, but here you are basically covering the state. So every job that's available should be coming to your attention through your CLC network. So, for sure be out there and networking. And I'm going to talk a little bit about now presenting your professional self, because this is, again, this is kind of job 101, but you want to be thinking about this, particularly since working in academia is a little bit different from presenting a professional self in clinical practice. So here are the things that I would say by the end of the holidays, the first of the year, you should have at the ready. You should have your portfolio, your CV, your philosophy, your personal statement shined up, ready to go in case somebody is interested. And these jobs are going to be starting to open quickly here after the first of the year, because people, if they're coming about because somebody's resigning, usually the resignations, come at the, give a semester notice. So you want to be ready to jump in and on anything that might be opening up. And then the resume, you will need transcripts, of course, and now probably it's not too soon to get those. I know they would want them, indicating that you've graduated, but find out where you get them, how much they cost, but how many original ones you need to have, and so on. So I would do that. And then it's helpful to be able to have business cards if you're out networking. And you can, you can make them on your computer, same with the letterhead. And it's not horribly expensive to have them made professionally either. So I would, give some thought to having that. And I know several of you I spoke with when we were, together last in November, I guess it was. I asked you something, and I said, can I have a business card, and I'll get back with you. So you want to be sure that you have some way of communicating with people on a random basis. Sometimes jobs are found, riding on the train or on the bus or sitting at Starbucks. So you just never know. And then another thing is to be sure that you have your contact information in a professional way. And I'm probably old school and fussy about this, but I'm kind of speaking about emails. And those of you that are, you will be graduating, and if you are using your school email as your professional email address, that will go away when you are no longer a student. So I would say get that, some kind of a email where people can communicate with you. And I would use a name that people would recognize. I probably would use your personal name here for professional business, rather than some cutesy something that some people have. I was working with a friend of mine who was trying to find a job as a landscaper, and he had the funkiest email address, and he was sending me his resume. I would be concerned right away about hiring him. So this tool set, have it ready, get ready to go here. Okay, and I'll probably don't need to say this, and you guys have been great with your manners and appearance, but you want to be professional, write your thank you notes, respond to queries and requests in a timely manner. You guys have, my sense of you is that you already have this under your belt. Okay, so when should you start doing this? And I was kind of concerned that I didn't see anybody raise their hand about that they had a good lead on a job at this point. And I also know from just working with students that people are in a first things first mode. You want to get that paper done or pass the next test and just go through the semester. But we want you to be as prepared as possible here so that when opportunities come your way, you're ready. So these are key points that I would say that you try to get ready here. You're having your job that you want in your elevator speech, and you're very methodic and deliberate about looking at where the positions are, being alert to anything else that becomes information about any of the networking that's going to occur. The other thing is that appointments will fill fast. This is always a competitive environment here, so be sure that you are ready. And you also may then need to be working with two clinical agencies, or two agencies, and two on your clinical agency. Mariana? Time for magic.
I am actually working on that right now. Because my hands are blinded. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's not your fault. So, that's our first match. So, when we have a minute here, now's the time to ask for questions and comments. And because we have I'll ask Susan here for some comments while you guys are thinking of yours, but we will have time in a minute here to hear some more elevator speeches, because by now you maybe have had some more ideas. But we have a question from Pat Reinecke. Pat?
Hi, yes. My question is regarding your personal philosophies. Is there a page limit that you think they should be, a certain length, so that they can convey what their philosophy is without being too wordy?
Well, I'm just going to kind of take a stab here. I would say try to get it down to one page. You know, 2 or 3 paragraphs that are succinct.
Okay.
You don't want, the reviewers or the search committee to have to pour through lots and lots of information, and particularly if it's part of a portfolio. So, everything should be just crisp and succinct. And I think also to be able to articulate it. Not only to write it out, but if somebody says, well, what's your view of what teaching is all about, or what's your philosophy about how students learn? Scholars will want to be able to answer that question. And writing the philosophy helps get that in your mind, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So, how about some other questions? Questions or comments? Okay. Susan, I'll ask if there's anything that you want to add here to the discussion.
I guess the only thing is, not really. I think that you've covered everything very thoroughly, and I appreciate that as well. I think that for those of you as master's graduates who are going to be, as I said before, for many of you this will be your first faculty position, and so the process, depending again on the type of position that you're looking for, there may or may not be multiple layers of who you talk to. So I think having your packet, and I like Diane's use of language here, crisp, clear, succinct, so that you really, who you are and what you're about really jumps out of that portfolio and that packet of you. It will be a really, really good tool for you. And also the preparation that you, as you think about this and you're focusing on this, the questions that you have will be very, very important in your ability to assess the fit for you in this position. So I just really do encourage you to wherever you do your best thinking, if it's the shower, when you're driving, those times when your mind sort of goes off and you have ideas. Make sure you've got a place to jot that down and have that become part of what you're pulling together for this.
Okay. Thank you. And I would just add a few more words about the portfolio and the CV. And I believe I've seen most everybody's portfolio and CV, and I tried to give a little bit of feedback where I could. Again, be sure that you have those, polished up. You have many more things now to add. You may want to condense and make it, brief and to the point now, and maybe bullet point some of the experiences that you've had. On that CV, be sure that you have headings that highlight everything that you have done in your career. Sometimes when I read people's CVs and I know more about them than they put on the CV, I get kind of concerned. So be sure that everything is there, because that's, for somebody who doesn't know you, that's what they're going to see. So if you've had previous experience or something that would be helpful, be sure that that shows in some way, even if you have to add a heading to make sure that it shows up. But this is not the time to be modest, so be sure that your CV is as complete and accurate as it possibly can be. Next, if you want to come to the session next week, we're going to talk to the incoming scholars about that portfolio. But if you want a little review, feel free to come and join us again. And then the other thing about that, your portfolio. Now be sure that it's kind of edited a little bit, and a couple, 2 or 3 pages maybe is sufficient unless they are asking for examples of your work. So I don't know that you need to include everything as you did when you are doing it for your faculty and for the purposes of this program, but keep it, again, showing as much about you as possible and the experiences that you've had and examples and how you've met the educator competencies. I think that would be impressive to schools in nursing, because most schools, are really aware of what those educator competencies are and how they play out in the school. So you would want to be sure that you could address all of those and how you've attained them. And then I'll make a comment about the professional appearance of all of these documents. And in my experience, and again, maybe it's because I'm buddy here, but I like these CVs and documents to be very, I'll say it again, crisp and clean. I don't like pictures on them. I don't think that that's appropriate. You guys can discuss that further amongst yourself, or Susan, you can comment on it. But usually in academic life, we're looking for a very straightforward portfolio that we don't expect pictures or drawings or art or anything jazzy or snazzy to it. We just like plain text. We want to be able to flip through it quickly. We like to see summaries, and we like to see the evidence. And truthfully, from my experience, any time that I'm doing a faculty search or interview, I'm looking at the CV and looking down there to see what the experiences are, what the publications, grants, those kinds of things. And even you may not have those yet. That's perfectly fine. But we're looking to see, what experiences you do have. So have that CV speak strongly, and have somebody, a colleague, your faculty member, your mentor, take another look at it to be sure that it's, ready to go. So, that's probably not said, but have those documents ready. They mean a lot in academia. So, any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, well, I'll move ahead here and wrap up a little bit. So, as we have done in the past, we always have some kind of a session follow-up. This time, I'm not going to do it so much in the WebEx discussion form, but these are things that I would like that you could be doing, and I would say to have them done by the first of the year. You have a little break here at the end of the semester, And while it may seem far off, and I know some of you aren't graduating until through summer school, but you probably would want to be applying for the positions now, even if you aren't fully graduated, because they may be gone by the time you get around to thinking about it. So be clear about what you want.
Susan, let me just interject there.
Sure.
I don't want you to despair if you don't. The positions that are posted right now, almost all tenure track positions will already be posted for next year. The part-time positions may not yet be. Part-time or positions that might have dual types of roles and things might not be. That's where that network is very, very important in terms of beginning to sort of find out, what people are looking for. So don't. What I'm saying is, you should absolutely be looking now, scanning now. But don't be discouraged or think that, nothing is going to be available, because a lot of that tends to unfold during the spring semester.
Yeah, good point, Susan, and probably never to be discouraged, because even things maybe open up at the last minute, and sometimes things happen for the best, that maybe the job you thought was ideal isn't, and something else comes on. But if you are not prepared and ready to seize the opportunity, then it definitely will pass you by. So I think that's what I want to be sure that that you're ready. You don't want anybody to miss an opportunity. So these are the things. This list is what I would suggest that you do when you have a little moment, even if it's your shower moment. Think about these things, and noodle around on the web and see what kinds of information is out there about schools of nursing, and what is their appointment process like? What is their promotion and tenure documents? What do they say? What resources are there? So at least you can see what kinds of things are available, even if it's not a school you're ultimately going to end up applying to. And get your references. Think about them, and particularly if you know your ideal job, then you will know who to ask, and ask if they would be willing when the time comes. And I don't think it's too soon to ask somebody now, and just to have them as a standby. But then when you do go, and the job is specific, then you want to contact them again and give them the information they need. And get out there and network, and more opportunities will come along next semester. And your mentor is a fabulous resource for you as well. So be sure to keep in touch, and have discussions in your faculty members, and all of us here that are part of the collaborative learning community. We're here to help you, so be sure that you take advantage of networking with us. So I feel like I've been standing on the pulpit here, but anyway, I feel passionate about this for you, and we want everybody to be successful. So we'll do that for the follow-up. I'll do my commercials for next webinars. We're going to have George Hebert from the New Jersey Board of Nursing next week, and this should be fun. It's primarily targeted for the doctoral students, but he's got some interesting information, so if you have time, come along. And then we'll talk about the teaching portfolio again. It's kind of the same things that we've talked to you before, but if you want a refresher course, you're certainly welcome to join us, and all of these will be archived, so if you're not available, you can receive the information otherwise. And I'll say the thank yous now. Certainly, Susan, thank you so much for being here and being kind of co-leading this with me, so we could, get all this specific information, so I appreciate that. And Nicholas, I want to get mushy here and thank you for all that you've done here to help get the collaborative learning community up and running. Nicholas, the vision for all of this, and we're going to try to keep it going. So thank you ever so much, Nick. And
it's an absolute pleasure, and it's been a great team, and we're all, I think that we've got a really good start last year, and we're going to continue strong this year, and, everyone says you never get too far away, so I'll always be here in spirit, and I'll be here if you need to reach out, and that goes to everybody, because we've learned a lot together, and I've learned and grown a great deal, so I've appreciated that opportunity.
Well, we wish you the best in everything, and we'll consider you an alumnus of this collaborative learning community, and you may be hearing from us sooner than you would think. And at the same time, we're welcoming Tanya and Len as a part of the team here too. And Mariana, thank you, and I hope your sore throat gets better, but we appreciate your moderating skills. So any last comments or questions? Now's the time to do it. And as usual, you can get a hold of me if you need me for anything. So any last comments or questions? Len, you probably need to push *6 so that we can hear you. Or maybe Lynn was had her hand up from previous times. I don't know. We'll give Lynn another opportunity. Hit *6 to so we can hear you.
Well, this is actually I'll just jump in. This is Susan again.
Okay.
Just want to do a final public thank you to you for your innumerable contributions over the last several years, and I'm ready to make you an honorary nurse, and I just greatly appreciate how much you've contributed. So thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is this good for everybody? A good starting point?
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, you're welcome, and thank you. And we'll wish everybody a good weekend and be online with you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.